this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 17 of the Standing Committee of Government Operations and Estimates. 3 quick points. Number 1, a reminder that next Tuesday's meeting will take place from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's Tuesday, June the 9th. Secondly, to all of the witnesses who may be asking questions or participating during the Q&A, I would ask that if you start a question or a statement in one official language, you continue on in that official language rather than alternating between English and French. That will be of great assistance to our technicians so they don't have to switch back between channels. And lastly, colleagues, Mr. Davies has presented and delivered to all of you, I believe, his opening statement in both official languages. However, in the essence of time, if we wish, if there is agreement, we can go directly to questions if I have consent for the following motion, that the speaking notes presented by Mr. Davies be taken as read and appended to the evidence of today's meeting. Colleagues, do I have consent from all of our committee members for that motion?
Yes.
Yes.
I see no dissenting voices, so in that case, we will go directly into questions, and the first round will be 6 minutes, followed by a 5-minute round, followed by a 2.5-minute round. And Mr. McCauley, you are our first speaker. For 6 minutes, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Welcome, witnesses. When companies who have received taxpayers' money for retooling, when are they going to start to deliver the first round of domestic supply of the PPE?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Honourable Member, for the question. In the case of contracts signed with domestic manufacturers, a number of these are already underway. I would ask if there was interest in further information on the state of deliveries and payments.
Maybe you can provide it to the committee then. Yes. And the same question on retooled companies retooling such as a GM who's receiving taxpayers' money for retooling, when they're actually going to start, and the amount of the supply, if you're able to provide that. Do you have any idea on general delivery dates or production dates? 1 week, 1 year?
In general, in response to the question, I would indicate that delivery of PPE in many cases is already well underway. It would depend on the product and the company.
Okay, when you say delivery is well underway, do you mean that it's actually reaching the provinces? Okay, maybe you could provide that information to us at a later date. How much in total taxpayers' money is going to be spent to build domestic capacity for PPE, whether retooling or new builds or?
So, Mr. Chair, I would provide the answer that based on the best available information we have, close to 700 manufacturers in Canada will, in some way, over the course of this, turn to supply for Canadian needs.
Sorry, let me rephrase the question. Not those who are going to receive contracts, but how many are going to receive non-repayable loans or grants from the government and from taxpayers? Like how much dollars?
Yeah. Among the firms that I was referencing, the 700 in total, a small portion of those would be expected to receive grants or other incentives beyond the contract themselves, which obviously is the most important matter.
That's fine. Maybe you can get back to the committee with the total. How much will Medicon receive?
So Medicom is under a letter of intent. Will be providing a supply.
No, I know what they're supplying, but how will they be receiving grants, non-repayable loans, et cetera, from the taxpayers? So
we at this time are in discussions with Medicom in terms of support for its scale up of Canadian operations, and that information that the member has requested would be available at a subsequent point, and we'd be pleased at that point to be able to confirm that.
How was Medicom identified as a PPE supplier? We understand they've received a sole source contract. PSPC said industry approached them. How were they identified?
So dating back to the onset of the crisis and very significant activities in the early days to mobilize, we in ISED reached out to firms that had an interest to scale up Canadian production. Medicom is a Canadian headquartered company that produces PPE, and they showed willingness to move forward on a plan that would meet Canada's time.
Okay, what date were they approached or contacted?
Yeah, I would want to check our record to provide the precise date, but it would have been in late March. But I would have to check our records to make sure I provide the accurate answer to the member's question.
Okay. Did any PPE suppliers, large-scale North American ones, contact industry about this?
So we have had discussions and continue, in fact, to have discussions with a number of large-scale PPE suppliers, those that provide the type of PPE that, for example, Medicom would, and those discussions are also ongoing, given that there's interest in the economy broadly for a restart of the economy to increase supply in Canada of PPE. Beyond
let me ask you. When we had PSBC with us, the Deputy Minister, Mr. Matthews, stated no other company had actually approached PSBC or the government offering, like a North American-based company approached offering to make PPE in Canada or supply. Is that correct? You're saying that you were approached.
So, Mr. Chair, the answer to the member's question would depend on the timeframes and the context for the
in April,
exchange that
March, April.
Yeah, so I was referring to conversations with Medicom that date back some time. I would say there's been conversations and a dynamic.
I'm referring to March and April. Did any other large-scale North American companies approach industry offering to make the PPE in Canada or provide North American-made PPE?
So as a general question, of course, we've had conversations with many companies. So I would think that the question as to what it was that the Deputy Minister for PSBC said would have to depend on, of course, the precise question was answered. We would want to go back and make sure we're checking our records to provide the most accurate response. Of course, many companies have approached government. Government has approached many companies, given the scale of the challenge, to pursue opportunities for Canadian production and to see if we can bring those projects forward.
Unfortunately, Mr. McCauley, you'll have to wait for the remainder of your question until the next round. And Mr. Davies, again, just a quick reminder.
Thanks, Mr. Davies.
If you could, when answering questions, Mr. Davies, keep the microphone as close to your mouth as possible, just for audio levels.
Yes.
We're having a bit of a difficult time hearing you. We'll now go to our next six-minute intervention. Mr. Jahari, you have 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And let me start by welcoming you, Mr. Davies, to our committee. It's good to see you. And let me also acknowledge the great work that the department has done in helping us mobilize both industry as well as research in Canada. In your opening remarks, you talked about the different mechanism that's available to us and available to the department that the department has effectively used, i.e. IRAP, SIF Innovation Supercluster, as well as Innovation Solution. My colleague, Mr. McCauley, also probe into the funding and various organizations that's been granted this funding, whether it's a fund or grant. Can we take a step back and talk about the criteria that the department uses under these programs to either do a sole sourcing or evaluating the organization that they're reaching to us, either for research or for the retooling?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question. I would just make a distinction that the department is not directly involved in procurement. That's obviously under the care of another ministry. But we certainly have used criteria to ensure that the work that we've put forward into our own programming and those in the portfolio will lead to the outcomes that Canada was seeking. So I would say, first of all, in evaluating proposals, the main question was timeliness and the ability of companies to deliver and to provide a complete supply chain response. Given the tightness in markets around the world, it was very important for us that we be delivering on domestic capacity that can be delivered in the full respect of all the supply chain. We also were interested in the speed with which the response could be mobilized, and that was very important, particularly when we evaluated a number of proposals for ventilators to be built in Canada. All of this work turned on delivering on time and to a specification that we obviously had as low a risk possible of having the overall supply chain be able to deliver the goods, which is really the purpose of having a Made in Canada effort running in parallel to our international procurement efforts.
So thank you for that response. So if I summarize, if it was the timeliness and how fast they can move and retool for organization to be able to deliver those goods. Naturally, that's related to the industry. How about the research? There's over, I believe, about $1 billion has been assigned to help us develop a vaccine and develop some testing. What criteria did the department use in their evaluation? And I understand you guys are not in the procurement, but you're partnering and you're providing those. What criteria did you use there?
Yeah, very importantly, obviously in research, just one component of a very large portfolio of research support is delivered through the Canadian Institutes for Health Research. So in that case, those funds would be allocated based on peer review, scientific peer review. They would be assessing a range of proposals and then obviously making recommendations for funding. That's not something obviously in the direct responsibility of our department. In terms of funding from the Strategic Innovation Fund, for example, the funding that's been announced for vaccines and therapies, we are at the moment establishing scientific and industry advisory bodies to provide advice to the department on the best opportunities to pursue, and that is ongoing. But again, it's important that we establish strong merit in choosing which projects will advance and that they will, stand scrutiny and deliver the results and outcomes that Canadians expect.
Great. So let's continue on that path. When the allocation of about $115 million for Institute of Health Research was announced, a portion of that went into developing test kits. And in your submitted opening remarks, you talked about the point of care test kit. I understand there are 3 different methods of testing, whether it's the lab test or whether it's point of care test or it's the serological testing. Can you expand on the point of care test kits and the advancement that's been made in there, in that category specifically?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. In terms of point of care test kits, a significant program that we undertook was through Innovative Solutions Canada to bring forward new technologies from Canada to deliver point of care testing, which is more rapid testing, rapid turnaround, actually to try to compress the time scale between testing and getting an outcome. A number of projects have been announced very recently, and those projects were selected again through a merit review, through a scientific and manufacturing analysis.
Quickly, can you highlight how the point of care test kit supplement the lab test, specifically in the remote area?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. The question is very, 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 very true in terms of the large scale testing is run through provincial labs largely. Obviously, very, very high throughput. That's the number we read about in the media often in terms of the daily testing. That's based on those lab tests. Yeah. The point of care, though, in rural and remote communities depends on being able to provide a result in place. So there are a number of test kits approved for this use and that are very important to provide answers where you don't necessarily have the logistics to move the samples to a major center and then bring back the results. You want to be able to provide that kind of information in the community itself. It's very important.
Thank you. I'm out of time.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to our 6-minute round. Monsieur Le Maire, 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Mr. Lemire, 6 minutes, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. My first question for Mr. Davies is the following. Do you, with a little bit, since a little bit of time has elapsed now, was Canada ready to face this COVID-19 crisis that we had seen coming? We had seen what happened in a number of other countries. We saw it spread. Were we ready to face this pandemic?
Mr. Chair, in answering the question, I guess I'll be very humble in that I wouldn't wish to extend my expertise to the question itself in terms of Canada's overall capacity and capability to respond and to make all of the policy decisions and implementation decisions to respond to the virus. I would say in our case, in ISED, our task was to mobilize our industry, mobilize our research, our companies to be able to respond and create a made in Canada response. And I would say we've made considerable progress, given the numbers I've shared with the committee in terms of the number of proposals we've been able to advance, the amount of production that has been turned to PPE, and there's a number of commentators that have shared information on that. And it's been very important to provide a diversification of support in Canada for the equipment we need, and also provide good jobs. And obviously this has been very critical also to manage the risk around tight supply chains and constraints in the world that we face, where everyone's chasing the exact same sort of goods and products. But that's our area of expertise, and I would just stick to that in terms of framing our response in terms of where we're at.
Dans votre allocation.
So in your speaking notes, excuse me.
Or if you could try and keep that microphone to about 2 inches in front of your mouth, our interpreters are having quite a bit of difficulty picking up your audio feed.
Thank you.
Pardon, Monsieur Lemieux.
I'm sorry, Mr. Lemire, keep going. You have the floor. Thank you. You spoke about a number of various programs for supporting the industry, for example, Industrial Research Assistance Program, Strategic Innovation Fund, Innovation Superclusters, Innovative Solutions Canada, and so many others. Do you believe those programs were used properly? And in this context of relaunching the economy and so on, what kind of advantages could it provide?
Answer, Mr. Chair, by saying that it was identified at the various earliest stage that these industrial support programs and research and development programs would be a key tool to mobilize Canada to respond to COVID. In fact, I would just highlight the support we've been able to generate through the innovation superclusters across Canada, who have now dedicated some $55 million to a variety of projects that are very critical in terms of meeting needs for critical equipment, and also to develop solutions to the challenges that we're now facing. So I think these programs have came into use and been able to channel their support to this current challenge and been quite effective in that regard. I would say also the NRC IRAP network, which is long-standing, very solid network across the country, over 200 advisors, has been very, very helpful to connect supply and demand and to be able to unlock the potential of our innovators to solve problems that we're facing here in Canada.
En date d'aujourd'hui, donc.
Now, as of today, June 5th, in the industry, the way you see it, where are there shortcomings? Any areas where we aren't quite as strong in our production, in our ability to meet the needs, whether it's in terms of health or other portions of our economy, or any shortcomings in our programs? Where would you say they are?
Mr. Chair, and again, I'll hopefully I'm holding the mic close so that you can hear me well, but I would say the areas to work on are related to the evolution of where the equipment is needed now. I would say the market demand for PPE, for example, is extending to the private sector as it returns to business. We need to actually continue the effort we've started so that domestically our businesses, our organizations will have access broader and beyond the healthcare system to these necessary equipments. I would say in the area of masks, some of the specialized masks, we talk about the N95 mask, and in particular, there's a very important filter material in these masks. We've dedicated some challenge efforts to coming up with new alternatives to this material. These are areas that we have to continue to focus on to ensure we have a full response and to be able to meet the needs to provide this critical equipment. So the work is not done. We have to continue focusing on the areas to build out our supply chain.
Vous avez.
You also stated that to restart the economy, the economic sector of Canada, you put in place a council for industrial strategy. This is more economic strategy roundtables type of thing, organizations. What kind of transparency will be provided by that council? How will it be responsible and accountable?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question, the interest in the Industry Strategy Council, which will provide in short order advice and guidance to the government on the restart, coming up with very concrete proposals in our sectors to get our economy moving again as we emerge from the crisis. I would say that the chair, Madame Monique Leroux, and her membership will obviously have to turn to the question of engagement with Canadians, a broad-based engagement to ensure all voices are heard and are taken into account as they form their advice to the government. So it's a very important area.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We will have to go on to our next 6-minute intervention from Mr. Green.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Davies, for being before us today. I appreciate the previous speaker's line of questioning, so I'm going to pick up on that. Has the council already met?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've had a number of discussions with the chair. Recently, the full membership was announced. They actually will be meeting in the very short number of days. And in fact, we expect they will be meeting on a very regular basis to provide advice on an accelerated timeframe to the government. And the chair has been very active in her own regard, building networks, support, advice, and counsel for her work. And we've been supporting the effort fully so that they can get up and running very, very soon. And I know that a meeting will be held of the full council in the very soon in the future. But I don't have the precise date. I would have to get that back to the committee.
Do you have a sense for what the agenda is going to be? What's going to be their priority in terms of delivery, aside from giving advice? Like, what's going to be their major focus?
Yeah, I think I would say in response, there are 3 phases of work or analysis that we think the committee would obviously pursue, but I don't want to be presumptuous as to how they wish to carry out their mandate. Obviously, they have to turn to the situation in our sectors as we stand now, which is obviously each of them are facing challenges and pressures that are very unique. They have to take an account of that and also understand fully our health response and how the public health advice and the evolution of the restart is affecting those sectors. The next phase is obviously to look then on how to stabilize, how to ensure that we incentivize the return to work that we can do that's safe, make people confident and trust that their workplaces will be safe, and to restore confidence overall in the restart effort. And then the third phase is, of course, reimagining and looking for opportunities coming out of this crisis and to return to growth, and to look at each sector where we're going to have to look at opportunities to work together between government, industry, and stakeholders to be able to get on a solid growth track coming out of the crisis. So I'd say there's 3 phases of work, but again, I would defer, of course, to how the council chooses to conceive this and come back to the government on its own court.
I do appreciate the fullness of that answer, and I see that on June 2nd, a list of the advisory council was announced. They seem like a very diverse and accomplished council. I'm wondering, what was the process for selecting these folks? How did we come to this particular group?
So I would of course suggest that some of the work to establish the council had been underway, in that the economic strategy tables was an ongoing effort, ongoing program in the government. That was actually at the time of the onset of the COVID-19, something we are already working on with our minister and to establish the chairs of the various economic strategy tables. And what we've seen here in this effort is to bring them all together in a unified council for a very focused mission, which is more or less along the lines that I described to you. And Madame Leroux was recruited to come in to chair the council. And I guess I would say, as you've said, the background, the expertise, and the knowledge of these council members is there for Canadians to assess. But we also would say the chair and her background as a business leader, a community leader, and long-standing leader and advisor on a number of government panels is obviously equips us well to have a strong group going forward.
Thank you. On the 22nd of May, the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, stated during a news conference that Canada is working closely with Apple and Google and provincial partners on an update to a mobile application to support contact tracing, which is expected in early June. What is the nature of the federal government's collaboration with Apple and Google? How much funding, if any, has the government provided for this initiative?
So, Mr. Chair, I'll ask my colleague Mark Sean to address that question. It's his area of responsibility in the department.
Thanks so much, Mr. Chair, for the question, and thanks, Mitch, for turning it over. So the Government of Canada has been exploring options for mobile apps that will enable Canadians to monitor their exposure to COVID-19 and minimize the spread of the virus. Sometime into the pandemic, Apple and Google made note of the introduction of an API that would allow for Bluetooth technology to be able to help facilitate the peer-to-peer capacities of telephones to be able to signal interactions, particularly interactions that may actually highlight the risk that people are at in terms of potential infection. The Government of Canada has been working with Apple and Google to understand the nature of that API, to understand its functionality and how it works within the telephone space, and how it may interact with a potential exposure notification application that could be brought to bear to allow Canadians to be able to understand the relative risk and the potential for them to have come in contact with COVID-19.
Can you comment? Would you care to comment on how we're ensuring that all the data from the contact tracing applications would remain in Canada and that we would have sovereign access to that? Or is this going to be a privatized commodity?
A very brief answer, if you could, please.
Mr. Chair, thanks for the question. So any application that the Government of Canada potentially would work into space would have to conform with the directives given by the Privacy Commissioners of Canada, who've laid out very clear guidance as to how contact trace applications and exposure notification applications potentially come to bear in this pandemic.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to our 5-minute round of questions, starting with Mr. Abulte for 5 minutes, please.
Yes, it's me, Tom.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's me. Sure,
go ahead.
I have Mr. Abulte.
All right. Well, welcome to witnesses. And my question today is, I think that this pandemic is presenting an opportunity for us in Canada to build a sector or industry that we somehow ignore for a long time. So in order to do that, I think the aim is to build the industry and to have 100% efficiency in terms of building products for Canada for Canadians, whether for the private or for the public sector. So the question to Mr. Davis, is this the direction of ISED and the government at the moment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question. I would say that the direction of our department is to build the Canadian economy. I would say that our efforts, the work we do with the private sector, the programs of support, the policy support we provide is intended to build up our industrial base. I would say it's heartening to see how our industrial base has responded and made it possible for us to find Canadian solutions in a challenging time when it's absolutely necessary that we bring these forward, because the entire world is, of course, pursuing the same products, services, solutions, and we need to be able to manufacture and produce those solutions ourselves. I would say one area of optimism, again, is in the area of vaccines. We know there's over 100 different vaccine developments around the world. At this point, we have many in Canada that are looking for support that we'll be evaluating very, very soon. And it's very, very encouraging to see how much talent and expertise we have in this area. Now we're able to obviously bring that to bear on this immediate challenge for Canadians, but it's also a long-term potential for Canada in the life sciences. Okay. So we see that together.
Okay, PPE is a new norm. This is going to be something that we're going to use probably for a long time. Being part of our life moving forward. In order to be able to produce a product, you need equipment, capital, and you need raw material. How are we doing on those three? I know the capital is being provided by the government, just on an equipment side and on the raw material side. How are we doing?
So I would say in terms of a high level of answer, in terms of capital equipment, I think the constraints are less daunting. I would say in the area of raw material, this is one where you can follow a supply chain all the way up and find that you've got to go outside Canada for certain critical components, particularly chemical components or elements, different products that are required. For example, in the pharmaceutical industry, the APIs used to create pharmaceutical products, these are made in other countries. we're sort of chasing these different issues on a daily basis. One thing I've been pleased is that to maintain our testing effort, we've unlocked supply in Canada of chemical reagent manufacturing. If we hadn't done so, we would have heard about a constraint in testing related to the manufacture and production of reagent in the country, but we've been successful to bring a number of companies into that market and be able to supply our domestic needs. So it's a very critical question.
If we don't have raw material dependency, we're really doing nothing. We're just, establishing an industry, but the main element in it is basically the raw material. And I understand and I know where some of the product comes from different countries, whether in South America or in Asia or other places. But how are we doing to be more innovative and under research to be able to produce product and raw material that is going to be giving us that independency that we must need it to be able to produce product without having to depend on anybody down the road?
Yeah, thank you for Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question, and it is an important policy goal. I think for Canada, in many areas, we'll be extending out the ability of us to manufacture and supply our own needs. I would say also, though, as a country that wants to supply goods and services to other countries, wants to engage in trade, wants to benefit from global markets, there will always be, of course, a balance between supply chains where we're depending on other countries who have specialized in specific areas that connect and cooperate with us. But I would say certainly at the moment, the priority, of course, is made in Canada solutions, because everyone's facing that same challenge all at the same time.
So in order to do that, we need to focus more on the small guys. I mean, there's so many great ideas across the country from all different corners, but seems now we receive complaints that the focus is only on sole suppliers, on big guys, ignoring the small ones. How come we don't go through the more into across the country of the smaller guys, the good ideas, and we support them in order to be able to get to achieve the goal that we have?
And another brief answer if possible, sir.
Yes, I would say that's an important point. Many of our most innovative companies are small companies. We are a country of small enterprise and very innovative small enterprise. One specific area is the mask material, the filter material. We have a number of companies we're going to be working with, very small businesses that have innovative answers, that want to bring these answers forward. It's a very important area of focus for us, and we'll continue to count on small innovators to bring forward these solutions for Canada.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to Mr. Kuzmierczuk for 6 minutes, or for 5 minutes, please. 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much, Mr. Davies, for your excellent testimony this morning. And Mr. Sean, really nice to connect with you after our conversations on the RPL program many moons ago. I wanted to follow up on the line of questioning regarding the contact tracing app with Apple and Google, and I wanted to ask whether the federal government was soliciting or collaborating with Canadian companies to develop contact tracing apps as well, similar to Google and Apple.
Thanks so much, Mr. Chair, for the question. And there's actually quite a bit of work that's been underway to understand all of the capacities and innovative capabilities that can be brought to bear in this particular space, whether it's contact tracing or exposure notification or broader innovations. And so the Government of Canada has been exploring options and working with a number of different companies and trying to understand and organizations to understand their functionalities and capabilities, some of whom want to work on top of the Apple-Google API, others who are pursuing slightly different approaches. The Government of Canada is engaging with provinces and territorial counterparts as they work to come to an agreement on and to work together on the best solution for all Canadians. And so we are continuing to explore, though, but many of them do actually include Canadian operations and Canadian entities who've come forward with potential solutions, and we continue to evaluate those.
And thank you very much for that. And actually a point that you had just raised, I wanted to touch upon. How does contact tracing work effectively in a federal system like ours, where provinces, for example, can download or support their own sort of contact tracing apps and whatnot? So what would be the federal role in trying to coordinate contact tracing across the different provinces and territories?
Yeah, so the government of Canada has been exploring a number of options, and we are obviously aware that one of the critical factors that determine success in exposure notification applications is uptake and the degree to which there's widespread adoption. One of the ways in which to fuel that adoption is to allow for commonality and interjurisdictional interoperability, and that's been one of the key priorities as we've kind of worked through this file. And we continue to work with provinces and territories to arrive at a possible solution that would provide that level of interoperability and to fuel that uptake. Because as you note, absent sufficient uptake, you actually run two risks. One is that potentially you fuel false confidence from folks who don't believe they've necessarily been exposed, but that's actually a function of the fact that they're not coming into contact with other people who have downloaded the application. And the other is obviously we know there's interjurisdictional and interprovincial travel, and we need to ensure interoperability across those that recognize the realities of Canadians who are crossing interprovincial borders. And so we continue to work towards that interoperability goal.
No, that's an excellent answer. I appreciate that very much. Do we have a sense of the percentage of the population that needs to have that uptake to adopt this app in order for contact tracing to be effective? Do we have a sense of what that target could be or target range?
There's been a brand new kind of a set of scientific and academic and other research articles that have kind of driven into this space as a function of the pandemic. And so there's no necessary pure answer to that question, but just to say that a number of studies have pointed out that potentially 50 to 60% uptake may be required to allow for sufficient penetration to allow for the app to be functional.
Okay, and just building upon that, would the federal government have a say in terms of whether an opt-in or opt-out model is adopted in Canada? Just curious.
So obviously, any model that the federal government would endorse or seek to help drive uptake towards would have to do a number of things. One of them is obviously we'd be pushing for something that could be interoperable, and the second is obviously that it needs to conform to the guidance that's been provided by the Chief Privacy Commissioners across all of the provinces and territories and the Office of the Privacy Commissioner of Canada, Daniel Terrien. And one of those is obviously that you need to be very clear up front with Canadians about what it is that you're providing them, what information it potentially is taking into account, and what controls they have over that information. And so I won't speak to the specifics of opt-in or opt-out, but just to say that obviously any application would need to make sure that it conform to that guidance that's been provided.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we've only got a few seconds left, Eric, but thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Tom.
We'll now go to Mr. McCauley again for 5 minutes, please.
Right, and I apologize for that earlier error. To the witnesses, thanks very much. It's nice to see some openness from our witnesses. I appreciate all the feedback you're giving us. I'm going to get back to Medicon. When are they going to start producing masks?
Thank you.
And have them ready for delivery? Because of course we saw reports. I'm sure you saw them today. The AAG consulting company says we're going to need about 750 million non-medical masks a year. When can we start seeing them from Medicom?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question. Obviously, very important that this be up and running in Canada. We know the company is working to meet the commitments it's made to the Government of Canada for supply. We would hope that very, very soon, and I would say in the summer period, they would be up and running and beginning manufacture in Canada. They are also supplying Canada from abroad as well. But,
right, I hear rumors they were the ones who brought in the shoddy equipment, though. But when are they actually going to start having it made in Canada and producing in Canada?
Yeah, so I would say I would at this point indicate that in the summer period, late summer period, we expect to see them beginning their production in Canada, and that portfolio of production will start with surgical masks and then move up to the N95 mask over time. And
when will the N95s? When will they start making N95s then?
So I would have to take that question to Mr. Chair on advisement to provide
within 6 months, within 3 months, like a ballpark.
Obviously, this is important. The time frame for delivery of this product is very critical to us. But I would ask that we take the question. I think, in fact, a public Services and Procurement Canada has a contract where these terms are spelled out, and I suspect the answer lies there, and it'll be best shared by the appropriate officials. So, but thank you very much for the question. It's very important.
Thanks. Let me just stick with that. You mentioned earlier you've met with, this is the very first we're hearing, I think, that the N95s are going to be way down the road. We were told in committee masks would be coming out, I think, end of August. Now it's further down the road, it sounds like, for the N95s. You said you met with other potential suppliers. Like, who else is getting contracts? I know PSPC, but industry, who are you meeting with to set up building N95s in Canada then? Medicom got a sole source contract, but it now sounds like they're not going to do N95s till the end of the year, if that. Who else is ISA dealing with to get this done, to get the N95 masks done, which seem to be the rarest and most difficult to obtain?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, absolutely. Then they are a specialized product, significant amount of components, much more complicated.
Yeah. No, we all know that, but who else then, besides a single sole source company?
Yeah, I thank the member for the question. I won't provide specifics on companies where we're having confidential commercial conversations at this point. There will be information in due course that would come forward as decisions are taken. But I would say that the question is who might be interested to establish their business in Canada, as well also to meet the broader needs of the economy. And we know of a number of companies where that might well be of interest. And we're glad to have that strong interest from those companies. And certainly,
let me interrupt because I'm probably running out of time. We all want the companies. Let me ask you: has a company, North American base, approached ISED and said we will build in Canada and have the masks start coming out end of May, early June?
So
have you had discussions with such a company without naming names?
So I thank you for the question, and I would say at this point we're having further conversations with companies that are interested.
In March and April, did ISED meet with such a company that offered to make the masks in Canada or North American made and have them start available end of May, early June?
I would answer by going back to my discussion of the early point in March, where we were looking for opportunities to expand domestic production with a number of companies. I would say that obviously the deal with Medicom went forward because they were able to meet the time frames. We're interested in establishing a domestic presence.
Did you set time frames till the end of the year for N95s when you said, because you talked earlier about importance of delivery on time? I think this is the first we're hearing the N95s are not coming out for them till
unfortunately
long
we're completely
after summer.
Out of time. But Mr. Davies, if you could respond to Mr. McCauley's question as soon as possible in writing to our clerk, we would appreciate that early response. We'll now go to a 5-minute round. Mr. Drouin, 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to follow a little bit of the line of questioning that I guess all of my my previous colleagues have questioned on, and I want to touch a little bit on the coordination that happens amongst the provinces. I know some provinces have also announced some funding, so as that relates to the SIF funding and helping companies retool in Canada, is there efforts that are being made to coordinate with provinces to ensure that we provide up more value for a dollar in helping retooling those companies?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question, and we appreciate. There's one industrial base. There are companies that we at the federal level and provinces would have an interest in partnering with.
Mr. Davies, I'm sorry to interrupt once again. If you could get that microphone a little closer, thank you.
So we appreciate the point and the need to coordinate, given that we're both drawing on the same industrial base, same goal, and we've actually established mechanisms in our department in ISED to work with the provinces and territories on industrial response and have regular connectivity with them on a bilateral and multilateral basis. Also, Public Services and Procurement Canada have a federal, provincial, territorial committee where they discuss the same topics in terms of what they're doing on the procurement front. And of course, the Public Health Agency of Canada deals directly with the provinces and territories on their needs. So I would say there's a wide range and very significant, strong connectivity with the provinces and territories to get to the same goal and to coordinate well and to join our efforts where we certainly can.
And another question that I have, and thank you for that particular response, with those companies who did get access through the Strategic Innovation Fund, I know that sometimes there are variables that are uncontrollable by the company, and when you're planning to whether or not to retool your industry or retool your production line, you think that you may get access to those particular to the particular material that you need, and then you have a timeline, and then whoops, suddenly certain contractors are not available to perform that work. And I'm just wondering if those conversations have been had with companies that have received SIF funding for COVID, specifically for COVID-19.
Yes, thank you for the question. And in terms of specific SIF funding to scale production, I would first say that it's not been a significant tool in the toolkit to this point to incent that production. I would say that the contracts that PSPC have put in the market have been very important. Those have been at a volume level and with a long-term nature, which has allowed the company to then have the wherewithal to invest the capital and make the arrangements with suppliers and so forth to bring forward that production. So I guess that the point I would raise is the emphasis on providing an incentive directly, for example, to buy down CapEx with the Strategic Innovation Fund has not been as significant of a tool in respect of the overall approach the government's taken, which has been more driven by the procurement decisions and contracts that have been led to date.
So just based on that comment, is there any particular reason why SIF has not been approached? And are you signaling to the industry that other than going through the regular channel of SIF funding applications that sometimes can take a few months, we understand the urgency that this must happen? Is that one of the potential barriers as to why companies didn't necessarily need to use SIF funding to retool their companies? Or
so, Mr. Chair, I would say it's more of a question of the tool that's required to get the job done, rather than a question of timeframes or whether approaching our department through the Strategic Innovation Fund is a longer-term negotiation or more complicated. I think the Strategic Innovation Fund in the days ahead is the absolute key tool to unlock the R&D potential, particularly to support vaccine and therapeutic development in the country. That's not a matter at this point where you're doing a contract. You're actually investing in the intellectual property development, the research and development. For us, that'll be a priority, and in fact, there'll be many projects that will be brought forward as a consequence of that support through the program, and it'll be done on a very, very timely basis. But in many cases, letting a contract is the quickest way to get to the answer.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to our last 2.5-minute round of interventions. Monsieur Bassou-Duval.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Earlier, my colleague asked Mr. Davies whether the Economic Council had been launched in terms of the industry and to assess the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic as well, whether it would be transparent, that council. That's what he was asking. Will it be looking at the impacts on workers and issuing recommendations? Will that be through a report? Will it be made public?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question, the interest in the work of the council, the question in terms of how it'll proceed and how it'll inform Canadians as to its advice. I would indicate that in the economic strategy tables process that had been run in the past, a very significant report was offered out of that process, very well received, had a lot of strong support from all sectors and stakeholders. I'm going to, of course, defer to the chair and the membership, of course, in this case, as to how they choose to form their work. But of course, it's a priority that they have a strong level.
I have one more question for you, Mr. Davies. My question is actually in the context of NAFTA, the government had said it would implement a monitoring system for imports, whether it's for steel or aluminum, to ensure that there would be no dumping from countries where steel, for example, is produced at much lower prices, and then that would be resold here at an even lower cost than the cost of production. Recently, we noted that because of the COVID-19 crisis, the government may be looking at postponing those monitoring measures. Do you not worry that countries such as China, which have not slowed down production, may decide to flood our markets?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Again, a brief
yes.
answer, please.
Yes, the question of dumping, obviously the production, global oversupply, in particular of steel and other products, very sensitive, very important topic for Canada. We've worked collaboratively on the international front to encourage that these practices would discontinue, obviously to protect our industry and the competitiveness of our industry. I wouldn't have specific information on the specific measures, but I think the Canada Border Service Agency perhaps could be consulted in terms of the system of managing what importation is coming in, but it's a very important priority, and I wouldn't say it's delayed in any way.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to our final intervention in the first hour. Mr. Green, you have 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm going to try to put it brief, and I hope to get the answer back brief. On the question of data as it relates to contract tracing applications, we heard about privacy concerns. What I'm interested in is the actual sovereignty of the data, i.e. who gets to keep the data, who gets access to the data, and how is it used? Is this like chess where we get stop time, Mr. Chair?
Thanks very much Mr. Chair, for the question, and sorry for being on mute. I think it really depends on the nature of the application, because in many of these applications, there's actually no data that's produced. So in the Bluetooth handshakes that are potentially actually engaging between two telephones using an API, the sole thing that's generated is a pseudonymized or anonymized key that indicates the contact between the two, and all of the information lives on the phone. So I think to the question asked by the honourable member, I would say it very much depends on the specifics of the application, but obviously concerns around data privacy, data protection, and privacy are foremounted in the government's operations of anything in the exposure notification space.
And I'll just put that I think that it's also incredibly important that in this time of mass collection of data in a pandemic, that we use it for the best evidence-based policies on a move forward basis. I'm going to pick up on Mr. Abdul Latif's question about sole source as it relates to procurement. And I'm wondering what is being done, if any, to track desegregated data as it relates to the gender-based analysis plus of procurement in order to provide equity, diversity, and inclusion, particularly as it relates to ethnic and racial and Indigenous communities.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just briefly to the member's question, the question of diversity, the practices of encouraging diversity, and specifics of the procurement the government undertakes is something I think that would be best addressed to Public Services and Procurement Canada, given they have the overall responsibility for procurement for the federal government. But
in terms of the uptake, though, of your programs and funding, in terms of the uptake of your programs and funding, is it a consideration that you have? Is it in your mandate letter to the minister?
It is of no question at all a consideration in terms of the programs of ISED. In fact, I was mentioning the Innovative Solutions Canada program when it was first launched many years ago. I think it was very important. We were very pleased to see a minority-run business in Winnipeg was the first recipient of the program's support, and we did a lot of outreach in that regard to make sure they understood that these programs are available.
I look forward to the report back, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davies, Mr. Sean, Madame McCrae. Thank you all for your appearance here today. Your testimony, as always, has been extremely informative. I will excuse you now as we prepare for the witnesses coming into our second hour. So, colleagues, I will suspend the meeting right now, but just one note of caution. We do have to adjourn the meeting at 1 p.m. sharp. We do have another Zoom meeting where our technicians will be having to set up for. So it'll be, I should say, 3 p.m. sharp Eastern Standard Time. I'm working off Saskatchewan time. So we've got 1 hour for the second meeting, and I will suspend this meeting at this point in time. We are suspended. as I mentioned earlier, have to adjourn this meeting at 1 p.m. sharp. So we will go directly into our statements. However, we do have one of our witnesses. We do have Madame Van Buren from the Canadian Construction Association, who has distributed her statement in both official languages to all committee members. So to save a little bit of time, if we wish, committee, we can adopt the following motion: that the speaking notes presented by Mary Van Buren be taken as read and appended to the evidence of today's meeting. That way we can save about 5 minutes, and rather than hear her statement, go directly into questions when the other two statements of the two other witnesses have been completed. Do I have consent for that motion, colleagues? Seeing no dissent, we will then agree to adopt that. Madame Van Buren, that we do not need you to read your opening statement, but of course you will be participating in the questions and answers. Our next statement, which will be 5 minutes in length, no longer, will be coming from the Canadian manufacturers and exporters. Mr. Wilson, you're up for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me here today to participate in today's discussion. It is my pleasure to be here on behalf of Canada's 90,000 manufacturers and exporters and our association's 2,500 direct members to discuss COVID-19 in Canada's manufacturing sector. Today, I want to talk to you about how Canada's manufacturing sector has stepped up in the face of this crisis, how the government support has been critical to this ongoing effort, and how we must begin charting a path out of this crisis towards recovery and prosperity for all Canadians. CME membership covers all sizes of companies from all regions of the country and covers all industrial sectors. From the early days of this crisis, we've been working with our members and governments to increase the manufacture and supply of critical PPE and healthcare technologies needed in the response. We have also been educating and informing manufacturers on the latest developments in the crisis, including on how to access government supports and how to protect their employees and supply chains. And we have been working to understand the impact on our sector and advocating for policy and regulatory and program supports from all levels of government. Throughout this crisis, the role and importance of Canada's manufacturing sector has never been clearer or as much discussed. Hundreds, if not thousands, of manufacturers have switched their production to support the making of critical PPE, such as masks and ventilators, and face shields and gowns. And many in our sector are aggressively working on developing better tests and a vaccine for COVID-19. Despite the current challenging climate, unlike other sectors, most segments of manufacturing have been able to continue to operate, albeit at much lower production levels. Through the first 6 weeks of the crisis, through the end of April, output had dropped by nearly 10%, and actual hours worked declined by nearly 30%. Worse, roughly 300,000 Canadians of the 1.7 million directly employed in the sector had lost their jobs. These job losses were heavily concentrated in sectors where consumer demand plummeted, namely automotive, aerospace, and energy-related areas. However, if it were not for the actions of the federal government, those numbers would have been much worse. In a recent survey of our CME members, 85% of our respondents supported government actions. The most important action taken was a wage subsidy program, with nearly 55% of respondents using CEWS. This is far and away the most used program, with tax deferral programs coming in second, with roughly 30% use. The heavy use of this program can be linked back to the reality that manufacturing can continue to operate, but they are operating with significantly reduced volumes in sales. Sustaining their workforce would have been impossible without wage subsidy, given the high overhead costs the cost to maintain manufacturing operations. Today, we're hearing from our members who are rehiring thousands of Canadians as they look to restart and ramp up their production. While there are a few outstanding issues with the CEWS program, and along with a myriad of the other programs that have been introduced to support Canadians and the economy, by our count, the government actions have been massive success. At the same time, we believe it is time to plan the next phase of action. We must start scaling back some of these programs and reopening the economy and rebalancing the country's finances. As the country begins to make the shift, there will be a natural inclination of governments of all stripes to focus on raising taxes to increase revenues to rebalance the finances. This would be a mistake, as it would further do harm to the economy and undermine their already fragile business environment and weaken long-term economic activity. Instead, CME is calling on governments to implement a manufacturing-led growth strategy for the country that will expand economic activity, grow government revenues, job creation, and exports. And next week, CME will be releasing our prosperity strategy that aims to set this framework for the country. This three-phase strategy can be summed up the following way. First, governments must reopen the economy and begin to shift support to consumers to get them spending again. Second, we must focus attention and investment in government procurement and actions that will support long-term economic growth and competitiveness. Specifically, this must include trade infrastructure such as roads, railways, pipelines, and digital infrastructure. And it must be to support companies to invest in new technologies to improve their productive capacity. Also, as part of this, we must include and implement some type of Made in Canada strategy that increases marketing efforts and raises awareness of Canadian-made goods for consumers, businesses, and government, as well as your trading partners. The third phase is that it is time for Canada to get serious about our industrial future and implement a comprehensive manufacturing strategy that can lead Canada's prosperity. Canada's business environment is simply not competitive. 2 data points underscore this. First, business investment ranks 5th worst in the OECD and is roughly 1/3 of OECD averages. And second, Canada's share of global trade and manufacturers' goods have been cut in half since the early 2000s, a rate of decline that far exceeds other westernized nations. This prosperity agenda must have 3 priorities. First, focus on driving investment by lowering operating costs and directly supporting technology adoption and fixing skills gaps. A key part of this must be to lower the tax burden to focus on growth rather than company size. And second, Canada must reduce its complex regulatory system, which often looks like we are actively seeking to stop investment from coming to Canada through actions like years-long investment approval processes and banning the use of commonly used and needed inputs like zinc, copper, and plastics. Next, we must focus on areas where we have competitive advantages, creating a natural resources development strategy.
Mr. Wilson, I'm sorry, I'm afraid I'm going to have to cut you off there. We do have very limited time for questions, and
okay.
we are far over our allotted time for your opening statement now. We will now go to Madame Bamford for 5 minutes, please.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me? I did realize that I was speaking through my computer and I've got that fixed. So
we're fine. We're fine. Yeah, we're fine.
My name is Jocelyn Bamford. I'm the president and founder of the Coalition of Concerned Manufacturers and Businesses of Canada and vice president of our family business, Automatic Coating Limited in Scarborough, Ontario, where we employ 90 people and we own over 4 patents in the corrosion coating arena. For the past few months, I've attended many committees and roundtables on the pandemic recovery, and here's what I've observed. Many panels are made overwhelmingly by NGOs, academia, non-for-profit associations, and unions. Actual business owners, those people that actually employ people, represent just a tiny voice. This means the voice of those that are paying for everything, every government program, is underrepresented. The makers' voices are drowned out by the takers. Please be aware of this when you're forming your policy. Those of us that had to show up every single day to keep the economy going are relegated to being told how we should open up by those who could stay safely at home during the height of this pandemic. This is wrong. The 92% of businesses in Canada that employ 100 people or less need to be heard on how the government should open up the economy. First of all, we need to get back to work. We cannot sustain our country and our economy if we don't. We are at the highest level of unemployment in 38 years. Those of us that continue to work as we were deemed essential learned quickly how to adapt to ensure our plants could continue to operate safely. We acted quickly to secure and to manufacture PPE. We implemented new policies and procedures. We hired extra staff for cleaning. We purchased an abundance of cleaning products. Some businesses even installed tents on their front lawn so that they could social distance during breaks and lunches. We installed plastic barriers. We invented new head and face protection for all of our employees. All this while the federal government was trying to call the very thing that was protecting our people, plastics, toxic. It is incredulous in this time of extra cost that the federal government would heap more cost on manufacturers in terms of doubling the carbon tax. It seems as the federal government is trying to do everything in its power to drive us out of business. So what do we need to do? Canada needs to bring back manufacturing. For the past 3 years, since its inception, the coalition has been warning all levels of government that there would be catastrophic effects from policy designed to drive out both manufacturing and the resource sector out of the country. Those two sectors are completely interwoven together. The lack of PPE and medical supplies in our country demonstrates this. Imagine what would happen during the next crisis if not only we didn't have PPE, but we didn't have resources to operate our hospitals. So what do we need to do in order to return our economy to full operations? We need testing. This is including rapid COVID testing, faster turnaround time in testing, and antibody testing. Health Canada needs to rapidly roll these tests out. One of our members that services refrigeration units had to quarantine its entire service staff due to a false COVID scare. The rapid testing could have prevented this 9-day waste of productivity for the entire team. This is what needs funding. What we do not need is to have the federal government follow the failed Ontario green energy policy. This policy made electricity 4 times the North American rate for electricity due to subsidies of expensive and inefficient wind and solar, which is carried unproportionately by Class B industrial users in the form of the global adjustment charge. In fact, one of my members just received a bill for $200 of electricity and a charge for $20,000 of global adjustment. It's these types of bills that push companies out of Canada. Carbon tax will be to fuel what global adjustment was to electricity in Ontario. It makes us uncompetitive, especially when you have products coming in from other jurisdictions that don't have these costs. In addition, small to medium-sized business means more support from the Canadian International Trade Tribunal. Canadian companies must compete with foreign dumped steel and other products, and the CITT, the organization that's to guard against this, seems many times to ignore this. And when they do call out unfair trade practices, the federal government rules against them, like in the LNG project. Or overrules, the CITT, like in the LNG Canada project. SMEs are not only shut out of North America large projects due to Buy America policies, but we're also shut out of Canadian large infrastructure projects. We saw this again this week with Atlas 2 being left on the sidelines for a $200 million Alberta solar project, which instead went to a Chinese company. Canadian companies should not have to compete with subsidized foreign companies in our own infrastructure projects. The coalition has signed on with the Canadians for Responsible Recovery, www.responsiblerecovery.ca.
Madame Bamford, unfortunately, we're over time as well, okay. And we do have a very limited amount of time for questions, so I'm going to have to stop you there and go directly into our line of questionings. Colleagues, we will start with 5-minute rounds to try and get as many questions in as possible. And we will start with Mrs. Block for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I would like to thank our witnesses for joining us today. On March 20th, the federal government announced a plan to help Canadian companies ramp up production of medical supplies needed to provide care during the COVID-19 crisis. At the time, we were told it was a strategy that would swiftly create pathways to deploy resources to Canadian businesses. Interested companies were directed to 2 portals, one on the ISED website as well as the website of PSPC. My questions are going to be directed to Ms. Bamford. Given your role in representing the coalition that you do, could you reflect on how the Canadian government approached the ramp up of domestic production of PPE, contrast that with the US, and then the impact on our ability to manufacture these much needed supplies?
So to answer that, first of all, there was no clarity on how the contracts were let. So there was, as the federal government had mentioned, there were thousands of companies that put up their hand to say that they could support manufacturing of PPE, but there was no transparency or clarity on how those contracts were provided, who got them, and what criteria was given. So that was a huge concern, and we still have a concern that we will continue not to have enough PPE going forward, and not enough domestic manufacturers, because it's one thing to say that you can do it, but it's another thing to say you can do it in the time that we need it. So not only do hospitals need PPE, but manufacturers need PPE to keep their people safe and to keep producing. So we have some grave concerns on how the contracts were let, what benchmarks are done to make sure that those contracts that were sole sourced have deliverables on them. And we're concerned that we are going to continue to have shortages in PPE, not only on the medical side, but on the manufacturing side.
Thank you very much for that. A follow-up question. There was an article posted today, Global News. Experts are saying that Canada will need to produce 40% of our own PPE in order to meet the needs that we have. Are we anywhere close to that?
Absolutely not. Manufacturers have put up their hand. They've just gone ahead and started to retool on their own nickel, a lot of them. But we need to make sure that those people that invested their own money to make PPE, because they recognize that there was going to be a hole in the marketplace, not only for medical, but also for industrial. We need to make sure that there's a way to distribute those products, and that there's an equitable playing field, because it seems when you look back at it, some of those contracts that were awarded had some political connections. So as small to medium-sized business, we want to know, does everybody have the same opportunity to produce PPE and sell that PPE, or is the federal government picking winners and losers as they have done in the past? And we don't think that that's an equitable way to go about running an economy in Canada.
Thank you very much for that. Mr. Chair, how much time do I have left?
1 minute.
1 minute. Given I only have 1 minute, Mr. Chair, I would like to table a motion that I put on notice on Wednesday. I don't want to take much of the committee's time to debate the motion. Everybody has had a chance to see it. I did hear the concerns and questions that were expressed in our last committee meeting about the previous motion, and I withdrew that motion. And I believe that this new motion takes into account those concerns and hope that it would be adopted quickly. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Block. The motion is in order and it is open for debate. So I will now ask Paul to assist me. If there are any speakers, please indicate by raising your hand, either virtually, get our attention, and we'll put you on a speakers list. Paul, do you have anyone that I have not seen?
Mr. McKinnon and Mr. Drouin.
We have Mr. McKinnon first and Mr. Drouin. Mr. McKinnon, please go ahead.
Merci, Monsieur le Président, et merci à Madame Block.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Block, for taking into account our concerns. Thank you also for providing the notice of this motion. I'm inclined to support the motion, but given that those who will be compiling the information will be the same people who are currently involved in the efforts to deal with the pandemic, could we ask her to change the deadline, add a few weeks, perhaps a month or two, in order to be able to respond to this rather exhaustive list of information that she'd like access to?
We'll go, before I ask Mrs. Block to respond, I'll first go to Mr. Drouin for his comments.
Mr. Chair, my colleague, Mr. McKinnon, just expressed the same concerns. That's all. I don't need to speak. Thank you.
Now, Mr. McKinnon, and if that is the case, are you proposing a friendly amendment?
Well, friendly is in the eye of the beholder, Mr. Chair, but yes, I am.
Mrs. Block, your response, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I recognize that, there is a lot of work that the folks that would be compiling this information would need to be doing. I don't I think the resources are there. We're not asking for anything that could not be provided within the time frame that we put forward. As I said, I took into consideration the concerns that were raised. This motion does not include emails, which I understand takes some time to sort through. And I would just say that I think the timing is important given our summer meetings and the need to be able to have this information in front of us before those meetings end. Thank you.
Thank you. Then, even without a date, Mr. McKinnon, excuse me, I take it from I take it from Mrs. Block's comments. She is not in agreement with your proposed amendment. I do not see any other hands up wishing to speak on this. If that is the case, we will go to a vote. Paul, can you please conduct that for me?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The vote will be on the motion in the name of Kelly Block, for which notice was given on June 3rd, 2020. And I will call the vote now. Mr. Drouin.
En faveur.
Mr. Johari.
Support.
Mr. Kusmirchek.
Support.
Mr. McKinnon. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Mr. McKinnon. Thank you. Mr. Weiler.
Support.
Mr. Abultiev.
Support.
Ms. Block.
Yes.
Mr. Macaulay.
Yes, thank you.
Monsieur Barcelu Duval.
Oui, je suis en accord avec la motion, Monsieur le greffier.
Mr. Green.
Support.
That would be, Mr. Chair, 10 in favor, 0 against.
Thank you very much, colleagues. That motion is passed. We will now continue on with our line of questioning. We now go to Mr. McKinnon for 5 minutes, please.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Merci à tous nos témoins.
Thank you to all of our witnesses. Thank you for representing your members and industry's points of view.
Is going to be principally, as you would imagine, reflecting the department that I represent, the construction industry. And I know we've spent a lot of time thinking about how we manage through this crisis and how we manage to emerge from the crisis. I would simply point out, colleagues, that we have had a remarkable run of operating safe and secure work sites. I say that, of course, in the knowledge that we need to continue to be vigilant. But that the federal construction projects and construction generally has been operated in a safe manner. And I think history will record that we were able to, even in the worst days, maintain the very important project on Parliament Hill in operation. And I want to thank Madam Van Buren and her membership for their leadership in proposing protocols and measures respecting the safe operation of construction sites. And I want to thank you very much for that. So my question will be for Madam Van Buren, and if she could just, I know her statement contains some information on this, but perhaps just a few seconds, if you would, on some of the costs that you're encountering, some of the unexpected or important measures I know that you're having to adopt that are going to represent cost overruns or cost magnification for the industry as we go through a COVID pandemic.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. And it has been a very strong partnership with PSPC and with many government departments. We appreciate that. And of course, on behalf of our 20,000 members, we are so appreciative of all the steps that have been taken to date by Parliament to help Canadians and businesses during this COVID-19 crisis. And as you've said, priority was always the number one. The safety of our workers, of our communities, was always the number one priority as we worked through the pandemic. And I think we've showed that we were very resilient and moved quickly to continue to deliver on the project. So some of those costs would would include, of course, all the PPE, whether that's the masks, the sanitation. In some cases, projects were delayed, so we had to extend the leasing, which led to financial costs. When we looked at physical distancing, we could have fewer people on the work site than we normally would. One person per truck, for example. You could only have a certain number of people in an area at a certain amount of time. You look at the sanitation of equipment pre and post. So there are numerous costs that have been incurred by the industry, both productivity and hard costs. And so our ask is that these costs be reimbursed as a responsible and fair owner, which we know the government to be, on federal projects. And normally these sorts of things would be treated at the end of the contracts, which could be on some of these federal projects, it could be 12, to 3 years out from now. So getting this money to our contractors, many of whom are very small, 70% of our industry are small, medium-sized enterprises. This cash is very important now as we lead into the ramp up and we help Canada get back to economic recovery.
Merci. Merci beaucoup pour ça, Madame.
Thank you very much for that, Ms. Van Buren, and I very much appreciate as well your cooperation throughout this time. As Mr. Wilson said, for the manufacturing sector, actually, the construction sector traditionally has helped us get out from an economic crisis such as the one we are seeing right now, or that we saw about a decade ago. I'd like to hear what you have to say about stimulus for the economy through construction and infrastructure projects and your perspective for the industry. How important will it be in our recovery?
Bjorn, in your response, could you please hold your microphone as close to your mouth as possible, about 1 or 2 inches away, please?
Thank you. I hope this is better. So thank you very much for the question.
A brief answer as well, please.
Yes. Thank you very much for your question. Of course, investment in infrastructure is the economic enabler. And we know that regardless of the sector, whether it's manufacturing, tourism, retail, all depends on having excellent infrastructure that connects businesses to communities. And we've seen this multipliers in the past around about 1.35. So for every dollar invested in infrastructure, it returns 1.35 to back to the country. If you look at the number of people employed, we're talking about 1.5 million Canadians. We represent 7% of GDP. So a healthy construction industry.
Thank you very much. Madam, I'm going to have to stop you there because we do have a limited time, but if you have additional information, I would ask that you respond as quickly as possible in writing to our clerk, who can then distribute your full answer to all committee members. We'll now go to our next round of 5-minute questioning. Monsieur Bassarou-Duval, 5 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Merci, Monsieur.
5 minutes, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Well, my first question will be for the Quebec manufacturing and exporters, because since the beginning of the crisis, the Bloc Québécois has been asking all kinds of measures and changes and programs from the government to allow Quebecers and also businesses to be able to get out from this crisis in this difficult context. And part of this is a help for fixed costs, assistance with fixed costs that the Bloc Québécois has asked, because yes, there were variable expenditures. Well, those are no longer necessary when nobody's working. However, fixed costs, you need to keep paying them. That's why the government needs to provide assistance with this, but there has been very little. Now, the only assistance that has been provided was through the help for leases, and that was quite restrictive. It had to be a total value of less than $50,000 in annual rent costs and so on, and the owners had to be ready to accept that. So is that did not help many exporters and manufacturers in Quebec because they need a lot of space to conduct their activities.
Thank you for the question. And certainly you mentioned two things and I'll add a third. So that on the lease program itself, it has been, frankly, the feedback we receive from our members not really relevant whatsoever for a variety of reasons. It's one, too small, and second, relies on the landlord themselves to apply for the funding and then eat 25% losses. We're suggesting instead that the money, just like the wage subsidy program, should go directly to the tenants, and then the tenants can pay the landlords that way. So we think it's the program has been designed backwards. We've communicated that, and hopefully we'll see some adjustments on it. So it needs to be bigger and targeted at the tenants rather than the landlords. The other piece that you didn't mention is, which was mentioned by others, but the absolute cost of operating safely, the extra barriers that get put in place, the PPE that's required based on new government guidelines and regulations are incredibly expensive. Even the ability to continue social distancing and operating at the same time means things like break rooms, it can't be used the same way they used to be used. So there's a lot of additional costs, testing on site for temperatures and things like that some of our members are doing. We need some type of support for that, in addition to the training of themselves of the executives and the staff. So we need more help in those areas on those fixed costs for sure.
Je suis content de vous avoir entendu là-dessus.
I'm very glad to have heard what you said on that, because I think it was very important to hear. It's not too late for the government to act, because we know that there are costs that keep accumulating and job losses accumulating. We're not through this yet, and so I think businesses still need assistance. Now, in terms of the Canadian Construction Association, throughout the crisis, we talked about supply problems and the importance of buying Canadian and local to help our businesses stay afloat. Now, in the terms of construction, it's clear that this also means, in terms of restarting the economy, infrastructure, and infrastructure needs to be built. Do you believe, because if we start with infrastructure programs, we need to ensure that there's local content, if we can call it that, to ensure that it can really benefit Canadian society and Quebec society?
Thank you for the question. CCA has communicated what we believe are important principles in economic stimulus. And one of those is that it has to be sized properly. So we are not looking for like $3-5 billion projects. We believe that they have to be appropriate to all regions across Canada, all sizes of businesses, so whether that's small and large, that there also needs to be all sectors involved, so whether that's road building, whether that's maintenance, whether that's building towers. So what we're really looking for is something that is very balanced in its approach and also coordinated with the local municipalities and the province, so that those projects that are delivered are meeting the needs of those communities.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to Mr. Green for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And once again, I have to thank the previous speaker for teeing me up on this one. For those that don't know, I'm the very proud member from Hamilton Centre. And of course, here in Hamilton for the last 15 years, we've been working towards a significant infrastructure project in the development of LRT, which of course would, spur thousands of jobs and economic development for the construction of low-rise residences and condos and so forth. I'm wondering, what role does the member from the Canadian Construction Association feel that public infrastructure projects related on, urban infill and best practices of transit nodes and corridors might have in a role in the recovery post-COVID for re-kickstarting the economy?
Thank you for the question. It's critical. We know that Ontario has something like $7 billion that has not been committed through the Invest in Canada program, which is a very important program. So it's not even new money. It's already money that's been earmarked there. And again, that goes to how can the federal government and the provincial government of Ontario work together, in your case, to make sure that that investment is made, those jobs are happening, the quality of life is improved for Ontarians.
And as it relates to the job force, like what impacts does this pause have on the continuum of the labor force being trained as apprentices and being trained in the skilled trades to be able to go in and backfill an aging out demographic of workers?
Yeah, that is the aging workforce, and attracting skilled labor is a priority for the entire industry. And apprentices, we have many who are already in that stream who are looking for employment. So yes, you're right. Those delays, any continued delays, mean that those apprentices are delayed in their training, and it takes quite a while. You can't just make these people overnight. So it's very important that we continue the investment in apprentices, and we also look for opportunities to continue to train them.
And where do you see those opportunities? Like I'm concerned that if there's a second wave, a second stall, that we might actually lose a cohort of skilled trade workers. What are you hearing in the industry in ways that we might be able to, utilize this time to the best ability to ensure that we have a diverse and newly trained workforce?
We are very proud of our track record in safety. And we believe that given the culture that we already have, and that we have demonstrated our ability to conduct construction projects safely, prioritizing our communities and workers, that we should be well positioned should, unfortunately, another COVID-19 strike or a spike hit. And so our goal is to continue to train. We have a campaign ready to go on construction as diverse and inclusive. Of course, it was delayed because of the pandemic, but that's certainly a priority to encourage women, Indigenous, new Canadians to join our industry, well-paying jobs, and they can link purpose with their careers.
I'm certainly proud of the work that's happening here in Hamilton Center with community benefits networks, which is industry, the labor unions, and the general public coming together to plan and plot this out. In your opinion, is this delay, is this pandemic, is it going to induce, or are we going to have pent-up demand? Do you anticipate there's going to be a boom, or is there so much economic uncertainty that projects are being taken off the table at this moment?
Yeah, there's an important mix between what the private sector is doing and what various governments are doing. So we are monitoring private level investment. We heard anecdotally that Quebec had canceled, the private sector had canceled numerous contracts. So we're continuing to follow up on that. And that's why it's so important that the federal government maintain its leadership role in investment in infrastructure.
Do you see the role, we floated the idea of a home energy retrofit program to help offset, obviously, the demand on fuel for the economy of sustainable urban development. What role could your association play in more sustainable urban development?
An extremely brief answer, if it's possible.
We'd be happy to participate in any way we can.
That's appreciated. Thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate your answers.
Thank you.
And thank you for your brevity, Ms. Van Buren. We'll now go to our 4-minute round of questioning, starting with Mr. Abulte for 4 minutes.
Good afternoon, Ms. Bamford. The question to you is, I know you're from the manufacturing sector. I work in that manufacturing sector for about 11 years. I understand that we have such a disadvantage and our productivity is not great. Policies, of course, doesn't help to give us that competitive advantage, at least to produce for the local market rather than exporting product overseas. Now we're on the verge of allowing suppliers to come forward, and you mentioned political interference on selecting suppliers, and I've heard some complaints from small and medium companies versus the major ones, and how much favorism is there to give the especially sole contracts and so forth. Now I've got another stage, which is awarding licenses for manufacturer to produce product, and as far as my understanding, that we should have opened the door for all small guys everywhere in the country to be able to come forward and give them the opportunity to produce a product that we're going to need for a long, long time. So do you believe that there is a political interference also on awarding licensing when it comes to manufacturing, in specific for PPEs?
Yeah, I believe that we need, and I'm going to also ask Catherine to comment on that, but I believe we need clear, there's no transparency. There's no explanation on how those first 5 very large contracts were awarded and what the criteria for these sole source awards were. And there is a lack of small to medium-sized business in these awards, of which, you know, we in the small to medium-sized space can very rapidly provide parts and pieces. We can change on a dime. We're very nimble, and we didn't see that. And in addition, I just want to mention on infrastructure projects where I'm just going to show this picture. I don't know if you can see this, but this is a picture of a pipe for an infrastructure project in Scarborough that was a water main being put in, and on the stamped on the pipe was Northwest Pipe Facility, which is of Virginia. So Canadian small to medium-sized companies are shut out in the Buy America, but Canadian infrastructure projects have no issue buying pipe that we could produce here, that we could coat here from places in the United States. So I know Catherine has some comments on that, so I'm going to defer over to her.
Oh, thanks, Jocelyn. Yeah, just very briefly, I mean, we were listening in on the earlier part of the presentation from the industry government officials. And I think that example of the N95 masks that came up was a classic example. It was a sole source contract. Again, the transparency and accountability are not there. The bureaucrat involved, and you know, nothing personal, but he couldn't answer your questions as to when these masks were going to be delivered. And this is, of course, a pretty crucial piece of PPE. So the whole small and medium-sized firms always have trouble accessing government programs like this, because of the massive amount of paperwork, bureaucracy, and so on. So that's always a challenge, particularly now. And granted, everybody's trying to do things really fast. So that doubles the issues here. Yeah, but again, if there can be transparency, accountability, because there's none, and this N95 company, you know, again, the bureaucrat could not answer when there would be masks. So I think that was a classic example.
Thank you very much. But unfortunately, Mr. Boutte, we're completely out of time. We'll now go to Mr. Weiler for 4 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for joining us today. I have a number of questions related to the construction sector here, and I'm wondering what proportion of businesses in the construction sector have now reopened and been able to rehire their employees, given now that several provinces and territories have eased the lockdown measures.
Thank you for your question. I don't have those statistics. Be happy to look into getting them to you. I think part of the question is also around productivity. So even if workers are fully coming back, there's still a productivity gap, as we said, because of things like sanitation. We've heard up to 1 hour per worker per day. So as workers are coming in, getting screened, you know, cleaning hands, cleaning tools, etc. So that is still an inhibitor.
Absolutely, and well, to pick up on a number of my colleagues' questions, what type of construction projects do you see as having the largest impact in creating jobs and leading to more long-term positive economic impacts for our country?
Again, one of the things that we've asked for is a 25-year commitment to infrastructure from the federal government to avoid boom and busts, and also to minimize kind of, you know, sort of quick knee-jerk reaction. And we think that would be very helpful in setting priorities. If you look at the Canadian Infrastructure Report Card, which we published last year, we've assessed the 7 asset classes of infrastructure. And if you look at roads and bridges in particular, they are in quite a sad state of disrepair. So that's certainly one area. But again, I think going back to a previous question, it's so important that infrastructure investment is spread out across the country to all sizes of firms, to all regions, so that as many people can benefit in building Canada and in bringing, clean water, education, hospitals, etc.
Thank you. And as the lockdown measures ease, how do businesses in your industry ensure the health and safety of their employees and customers?
That is their number one goal, and that has been a culture for many years. This is not new to us. How do we adopt? And the industry was extremely collaborative, came together, shared all kinds of best practices. As you can imagine, things were changing daily, sometimes hourly, with what the best practices are. CCA itself has a whole page of resources. We worked with the federal government, as well as Parliamentary Secretary McKinnon said, to create a protocol. And this is continuing. It's very collaborative. We will make sure we will do what is necessary for our workers, communities, and their families.
Mr. Weiler, if I can interrupt, I noticed that Mrs. Swift has raised her hand. I think she may want to have a comment, if it's all right with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just wanted to briefly add on the infrastructure project issue that right now, federally and in many provinces, there are restrictive bidding requirements. For example, often limited to a particular set of labor unions, for firms that are organized by a particular set of labor unions, and that is frequently the case. And what this does, of course, is shut out largely small and medium-sized businesses, because they are the ones that, for all kinds of good reasons, are not unionized companies, and yet they're fully capable, full tax-paying businesses. It also, there's been a lot of research that shows that those kind of restrictive closed tendering requirements bump up the cost of projects by as much as 40%. So at a time when everybody's broke after this crisis, that would be a very sensible policy to open up tendering to all qualified businesses.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to Mr. McCauley for 4 minutes, please.
Great. I want to thank all the witnesses, and Ms. Swift, it's great to see you. I enjoy your advocacy for small business in your tweets, so thanks very much. With the limited time we have, I'm going to introduce the motion that we submitted last week regarding calling PSPC, et cetera, to appear for witnesses for the estimates review.
Thank you very much, Mr. McCauley. Colleagues, Mr. McCauley's motion is in order, and we will now open up. It is debatable and amendable, but we will open up for debate. If you have a comment or a question, please raise your hand.
I'll just say one thing on it. I realize there's difficult timing with other things, so my suggestion is we leave it up to the clerk to try and arrange the meetings. And this is not necessarily to have the ministers to appear before us, but at least the deputy ministers and other appropriate people as witnesses.
Yeah,
thanks.
Yes, thank you, Mr. McCauley. And the clerk and I have been discussing this, the possible timing of this. We have, as you know, meetings scheduled for next week and the week after. If it would be to have a discussion on the SUPs next week, we would probably have to cancel one of those meetings. However, there's a possibility we might be able to schedule a SUPs discussion on the 16th of June. However, I will leave it up to the committee members to determine that. If you have comments you would like to make, please raise your hand.
Mr. Green would like to speak, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Green, please go ahead.
I know that when they take it to the committee of the whole, I want to make sure that as a committee we've had a first crack at it and not just some kind of overture. So it's a priority of this committee. It's the work that we're mandated to do, and I think that it should, in this particular moment, be a priority for questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Green. And again, I'm telling the committee things they already know, but the 4-hour discussion on June 17th is the only opportunity, unless there's a motion such as Mr. McCauley's, to look at the SUPs before that. But the 17th is when the 4-hour debate will take place. Are there any other comments besides Mr. Green's before we vote on Mr. McCauley's motion? I see none. In that case, Paul, I'll ask you to call the vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The vote is on the motion in the name of Mr. Macaulay, for which notice was given on Wednesday, June 3rd, pertaining to the supplementary estimates A. And I will call the roll now. Monsieur Drouin.
Oui.
Mr. Johari.
Support.
Mr. Kusmirchek.
Support.
Mr. McKinnon.
Oui.
Mr. Weiler.
Supports.
Mr. Abultiev.
Oui.
Ms. Block.
Yes.
Mr. Macaulay. I guess so. Monsieur Bassel Duval.
En accord avec la motion, Monsieur le Président, Monsieur le greffier.
Mr. Green.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, that is 10 in favor, 0 against.
Thank you very much, Mr. Clerk. The motion is carried. Mr. Macaulay, back to you. We have 5 minutes left in our meeting, Mr. Macaulay, and I did not dock you time because of the
thanks.
motion.
I'll yield my time to my my colleagues, as I've used up enough for this, so they can ask their questions.
Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. We'll now go to Mr. Johari for 4 minutes, please, and this will be our last intervention.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, MP Macaulay. Thank to all the witnesses. I have a couple of quick questions from Madam Bamford. First of all, thank you for your testimony. It was quite informative. Can I ask you what type of membership does your coalition benefit from?
We have over 300, primarily small to medium-sized business, but moving more. We've been attracting more medium-sized business. Primarily, we are a grassroots organization. We don't have any full-time employees. We're all just business owners. We do this as a volunteer basis because we think small to medium-sized business is so important to this country. Absolutely.
I'd like to also echo that SMEs are the backbone of this country, and thank you for advocating on their behalf. You mentioned that you had the feeling that most of the consultation on the government was done with the NGO and very little business, small, medium business owners' involvement. Has any of your 300 members been involved in any sort of consultation at any jurisdictional level, whether it's federal, provincial, or municipal or regional?
Yeah, so during the last, I would say, 4 weeks, every week we've been on either a federal committee, a provincial committee, probably even the last 6 weeks, and even at the municipal level. So there's one of our members are involved at least once a week, if not a couple times a week, sitting on various task force committees. But the concern we have is we represent a small voice. We should represent a big voice because we're the ones doing the heavy lifting. We're the ones that are still working, and we're the ones that contribute to every program, policy. Everything that happens because of private enterprise.
Has any of your members or your company, for that matter, I believe you mentioned that you have you're part of the SME sector with 90 employees in Scarborough. Congratulations and thank you for your support during these times. Has any of your members or your company benefited from any of the government program that's been announced from any levels, whether it's federal, provincial, such as the wage subsidy or CERB or on? Okay, go ahead.
No. So often I will refer to small to medium-sized business as the forgotten middle child, and it just seems like so many programs we don't qualify. I didn't even qualify. We've hired 4 summer students that are graduating, going to college next year. 2 are Indigenous students, and there was no program. Where there was no program, we didn't. We went to our MP, Sean Chen, who has tried to be helpful because we didn't. There was no money left, and we understood that MPs had the ability to go and assign summer students if there was extra dollars. And so we did go to him to see if we could get our support for our summer students. There was no resources. So
quickly, if I have some time on the testing, you mentioned that the testing and the rapid testing is critical to SMEs. What are your thoughts on all levels of government involvement in testing and mobilizing the testing?
Yeah, it needs to be faster.
Madam Bamford, only because we're out of time, we do have to adjourn sharply at 1 o'clock. If I could get you to please, as quickly as possible, present an answer in writing to our clerk to Mr. Johari's question, and we would appreciate that very much. That will then be distributed to all of our committee members. Now, to all of our witnesses, thank you so much for being here with us today. Your testimony, again, has been extremely informative and helpful. So we thank you for that. And colleagues, I will now say have a great weekend, safe and healthy, I hope. And we are adjourned.
Thanks all.